Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. The Economic Survey 2018 had an entire chapter devoted to frivolous tax litigation by the government. It said that the government is the biggest litigation in the tax arena in the country, and it also pointed out that it happens to be the biggest loser. The government's success rate in tax cases that it files in various courts at various levels has been pathetic, but it yet continues to recklessly file such kind of frivolous cases. Taxation has been a key area of litigation in the country, and it hampers the ease of doing business of any entrepreneur. The reality is that despite such a dismal success rate of the government in courts in respect of tax cases it files, despite that, the number of cases filed by them have been increasing every year, such that the backlog has been mounting and there is a mountain of cases pending to be disposed of. The cases which are disposed of every year fall short of the number of new cases that are filed, and thus courts are clogged with these kind of cases. This entire round of litigation starts by virtue of untenable orders passed by various tax authorities, under which huge, frivolous, unjustified additions are made to the income of taxpayers. Huge demands get raised in the process, and that triggers a round of litigation. It travels from the CIT appeals, as we call it, and goes right up to the Supreme Court. And today, estimates say that there are about 5 lakh such cases awaiting disposal by various appellate authorities and judicial authorities, and the amount of tax involved in them is about 9.32 lakh crores, which happens to be an entire years of tax collection of the government of India. This kind of litigation, where the government very clearly loses because they are not correct, this kind of litigation results in a waste of time, money, resources, not just of the taxpayer, but also of the government of India too. Those resources can be put to far better use. It is because of these mounting cases, even in other domains like service tax, that last year the government came up with a service tax dispute resolution scheme. That scheme was a good success. The government had estimated to collect about 35,000 crores under that scheme, and the final collection was 39,000 crores. It was very clear that, encouraged by this success, the government would come up with such a dispute resolution scheme for income tax disputes also. And that's what we have seen in the budget. The finance minister announced a scheme for resolving income tax disputes amicably, which is called the Vivad se Vishwas scheme. The finance minister rightly expressed concern over the mounting tax cases in the country. She pointed out that a huge amount of revenue is stuck in tax arrears because of this kind of litigation, and she agreed that a large amount of the country's time, money, resources is wasted in pursuit of this kind of litigation. Thus, it was necessary, as she said, to come up with some kind of a dispute resolution scheme in order to be able to settle these cases, and also to ensure that the backlog of tax litigation is reduced to the best possible extent. What is this scheme all about? The scheme says that for all those appeals which are pending at various forums as of 31st January 2020, for all those appeals, taxpayers have an option. They can approach the income tax department and say that they wish to resolve the appeal under this particular scheme. And if they do so, they would only pay the tax amount involved. Now what happens in appeals is that as they keep on dragging for years, a huge amount of interest and penalty very often mounts, which very often is in far excess of the basic tax amount itself. The government is saying, file an application, close the case under the scheme and pay only tax. We will not charge interest, we will not charge penalty, we will not prosecute you. The scheme also says that in case of appeals which relate to penalty and interest and other kind of fees, you can approach the department and close the case by paying just 25% of the amount involved. This scheme is valid only till 31st March 2020 because the government of course needs the resources. It is short of resources and hence such a short time notice. In case enterprises do not close it by 31st March 2020 and it goes beyond this financial year, then they will end up paying 10% higher tax or 5% higher penalty in case of cases finally resolved. To us, the scheme looks to be attractive. The reason it looks attractive is in those cases which have been dragging on for years together and may drag on for a further number of years, in case the taxpayer loses the case, there's going to be huge interest, there'll also be penalty, there could be prosecution. It is in the taxpayer's interest to avoid that uncertainty, to avoid that contingent liability on account of interest and penalty and prosecution that might arise. And thus, in those kind of cases, it looks attractive. It is certainly not attractive in those cases where the taxpayer knows that the demand is completely bogus and illegal and he is confident of his victory. So the success of this scheme is going to be moderate. It depends on the facts of the case and how does the taxpayer deal with it. But for those who choose to opt for it, it means that that tax litigation and the uncertainty with it will come to an end. If the scheme is successful to a certain extent, the courts are going to be declogged, that amount of cases are going to be withdrawn, having been resolved. And the government says that for those who have opted for the scheme, there will not be any further reopening, appeals, litigation of any sort whatsoever, neither from the taxpayer side nor from the department side. The revenue expects that about 60,000 crores will be raised by the government because of taxpayers resorting to the scheme. We think that this scheme is an acknowledgement of the fact that the earlier offers by the government to settle tax claims of taxpayers had failed, and thus this kind of a more amicable approach in settling tax disputes. Let me point out, the scheme is not available for tax disputes arising on account of income tax raids, arising on account of money laundering, benami transactions, black money transactions, and those of an illegal nature. What is the larger picture here? The larger picture here, according to us, is that at the moment, the government might be able to resolve some of its cases, but then they will mount again in future. The problem of mounting tax cases will not be resolved unless the entire culture of the tax department, the way it passes orders and the way appeals are filed by the government is changed. If that culture is not changed and orders continue to pass in the same manner, yet another round of litigation will trigger, and at some point of time in future, a huge backlog is bound to be created, and again, it will need to be cleared out. Thus, along with this, we need to have some procedure or scheme by which those reckless orders and appeals are not passed by the tax departments. Maybe the taxpayer charter which the government is talking of might be able to ameliorate this matter to a certain extent. The other larger picture, according to us, is that ease of doing business in India is hampered considerably by these kind of litigations which are inflicted by the government of India. In case we really need to resolve and make ease of doing business simpler in the country, this kind of litigation needs to stop. The fact is, the government loses most of these cases. It is time for it to realize that such kind of cases should not be filed at the very inception at all. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.
If you like this video, please share it, and we would love to hear your comments in the comments section down here. Also, please do like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter to get minute-to-minute news updates. For more such shows and videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel.